if you can have anything you want, what would it be? If you could ask for anything you want, what would it be? There's a classic story, analogy, given about a person, an individual, who was very successful, a very God-fearing, a very fine, refined person with a beautiful family. And as it is the case in the story with Job and other sufferers in history, the challenging angel came and said, listen, God, here's a person, he's blessed with all these good things. That's why he's so God-fearing and that's why he's such a fine person. Let's test him and challenge him. Take away his gifts and let's see then, when he's put up to the test, what he's made of. And so indeed that happens. Everything is taken away from him. His wealth, his family, his health. And the only thing he's left with is his own body. And even then, he's struck with a leprosy, with a terrible itch all over his body. Long story short, finally there's a voice of mercy in heaven that says, you know what? You've suffered enough. Let us grant him one request. And a voice comes to him and says, ask for anything you want and you will be granted that request. At that precise moment, this individual had a terrible itch on his back. You know those itches that you really like, it completely consumes you. So at that moment, what did he ask for? He asked for a back scratcher, for a shard, to be able to reach the scratch, so he can, to reach the itch so he can scratch it. And his request was granted, of course. This is what usually happens with us when someone says, ask for something. We don't think long term, we don't think the big picture, we think what is it that we immediately need? And immediate doesn't always mean this moment, it means where's our head at? And most people would answer, give me a lot of money. Give me a lot of possessions. Some type of material request that, if you think about it, is not going to last long. And you've already given up your request. So we are challenged when a question like that is posed to us to determine what is it that we really stand for and what is it that we really want. If you can ask for anything you want, what would it be? So of course, once this introduction is stated, most people would say, okay, then I'll ask for something that's not so immediate, something a little more permanent. What can that be? Many people would say happiness. But happiness is a result of something. If you were just given a gift called happiness, how could you sustain it? Good, you can ask for a happy disposition. That is definitely a very good request and would probably go up there as one very, very legitimate type of request. But obviously, I'm not coming away here with giving you one answer. The challenge here is that you should find the answer for yourself. Obviously, I will discuss this more at length, but the real key goal here, the real objective here, is that you should think about it in that context. The fact remains, as statistics show, and many studies show, if someone is offered $100,000 over the next 5 years, or $10,000 right now, meaning it won't be paid out over 5 years, they will request for the immediate. Even though it's $90,000 more, but it's down the road. There's something about the compelling here and now that consumes us. And that's why we can spend millions, if not billions, if not trillions of dollars on what? On a thing like food, which lasts seconds. The taste of a good food lasts seconds before it becomes mush, and it's an equalizer. Any food going into your mouth becomes the same type of mush that gets digested. And yet, what will we do for that moment? And the same thing with other pleasures. I just use that as an example. So as much as our minds and our cognitive skills, cognitive faculties tell us that there's more to life than the immediate, that is what we gravitate to because that's what we're accustomed to. So in a way you can say that a human being really is made up of like two parts. There's a part of us that is the survivor and therefore looks and seeks things that are going to be necessary for your particular survival. Person's need of oxygen, air to breathe, food and drink to consume, a home to live in, shelter, clothing and garments to protect ourselves, So these are all needs. And they're very important needs, especially when a person is in a dangerous situation or subject to, exposed and vulnerable to the elements. We definitely need these elements. And they become the most, we need these so-called resources that provide us the protection, the shelter, the sustenance necessary. When it comes to transcendent things, many people would say it's very beautiful to have a transcendent experience, but it's not a necessity. I can live without it. I can't live without oxygen. I can't live without food and drink. I can't live without a home. I can't live without clothing and other items. There are luxuries, but there are necessities. So when we say, if you could ask for anything, make sure our necessities are there. However, necessities is about surviving, and yes, it's true, keep you alive, you need these elements. But what really makes a human being is more than just the survivor, is that we indeed seek out things that are more transcendent. So we really have a conflict. If you think about it, it's a conflict between these two voices. I've spoken about this many times in the context of like the example, the analogy of the flame and the wick. When you look at a flame and a wick, you have the closest approximation to the struggle and the battle between the tug of material life and the gravitational pull that draws us down like the wick, and the transcendent voice, the restless transcendent voice of the spirit and the soul that licks the air, that wants to go upward, that expires. And there's a struggle. If you look closely at a flame, you'll see the flame struggles with the wick. The flame wants to continue to rise, but the wick in a sense is telling it, stay here, stay grounded. This is an analogy for our body and soul. It's an analogy for our material needs and our spiritual needs. And for a person to be complete, it's not just enough to feed our bodies, we also need to feed our souls. But how do you feed your soul? The soul is not sustained by food and water. The soul is not sustained by oxygen or garments or shelter. The soul is sustained by spiritual activities, by spiritual energy. And when you have the soul nourished, that's when you really have the complete picture of a human being in ability to really reach the highest places one can reach. So to give the first level of this answer would be essentially that if you're able to ask for anything, what would it be? Would be ask for the eternal. Don't ask for the temporary, because the temporary comes and goes, and you'll need to ask again. Ask for the eternal. You get the eternal, then you have the foundation upon which you can build everything. It's interesting, when King Solomon was granted that, was offered that he can ask for anything. What did he ask for? Not wealth, not territory, not many other of the items that a king would want to have. He asked for wisdom. And with explanation, because if you have wisdom, you'll know how to ask for everything else, you'll know how to gain everything else. And he was granted the wisdom. So that definitely fits into the answer, to ask for the wisdom to know what to ask for, the wisdom to know how to acquire things that you need and beyond what you need. But I want to take it even a level further. One of the Psalms that we say, in the beginning of Elul, if you follow the 60-day book, you'll know that every day is a workbook that goes from the month of Elul, which was the preceding month, the 30 days that prepare us for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and we'll continue the next 30 days of the month of Tishrei, the Hebrew month of Tishrei. So beginning of Elul, there's a verse, Psalm 27, that we all say every day. And this is said throughout the holiday season, all the way till Hoshana Rabbah. And in the beginning, the verse, the Psalm begins, L'David Hashem Eri, V'yishim emi ira. Let's translate it. L'David, by David, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? And then he continues, and I'll just translate. The Lord is the strength of my life. Whom shall I dread? When evildoers approach me to devour my flesh, my oppressors and my foes, they stumbled and fell. If an army were to beleaguer me, my heart would not fear. If war were to arise against me in this, I trust. And then continues, and this is the key verse I want to say. Acha sha'alti me'es Hashem, oisa avakesh, shifti bebeis Hashem kol yemei chaye, lachzes b'noyim Hashem levat ker b'heichole. Translated. One thing I've asked of the Lord that I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the pleasantness of the Lord, and to visit in his sanctuary. And then continues to speak about how this power allows us to face any adversity and any challenges that may come our way. The key thing here is the one thing I have asked the Lord, and he says three things. This I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, that I may behold his pleasantness, and that I may visit his sanctuary. What is the difference between these three expressions, and what in general does it mean, one thing I ask? Well, above all, it comes to tell us where true confidence and security comes from. And let's talk about that, confidence and security. Ironic to me, always whenever I think of financial securities, they call it security. The prudential rock. Security, meaning build your secure nest egg, which is your finances, so you'll have enough in your retirement, you'll have enough to live by. It's a fundamental principle in Western society and Western civilization. But think about it. Can something that itself is not permanent give you security? Would you trust a stone or a rock or a ship that's subject and vulnerable to the elements or to the waves to provide you this eternal security? And yet that's exactly what we're saying. Financial security is providing you security when it can provide, yes, it can provide you the ability to buy things, the ability to protect yourself from things, the ability to travel, the ability to run if you need to, God forbid, but the bottom line, the ability to survive. But is it really security, or just being able to make it in a hostile, difficult world? Comes King David and says the real secret to security has to come from something that's eternal. If you can hold on to something eternal, something that's everlasting, then you know that you can stand on that forever and ever. And this is the three things he says. It is, number one, to dwell in the house of the Lord. We'll discuss the details in a moment. Number two, to behold. Lachzes. Lachzes means more than just behold, to you can almost say revel, Lachzes means to see, behold, but in a profound way of seeing something, in the pleasantness of the Lord. And finally, to visit his sanctuary. So all three of them have one thing in common, and that is it's not man-made. It's something based on the Lord, something godly, something divine. Which means it is not subject to the vicissitudes and to the changes and shifts of an eroding, deteriorating, aging, mortal world. And that's why it provides such security. So when you're looking for the ability to be able to prevail over everything, you need something that's more and stronger than where the problem originates from. You cannot solve a problem from the same place where the problem originates from. So by going towards, it says, one thing I ask, one thing I request, by going to the house of the Lord, which means to dwell in a place that is eternal, that eternity provides us with the security, provides us with the confidence, provides us with the fortitude necessary to deal with any given challenge. And that's the key difference between symptoms and roots. When a person had that scratch on the back and he asked for a back scratcher, he was dealing with a symptom. He had his back scratcher, and now he dealt with the itch, and then the itch goes away. What do you do then? However, if he were to ask, for example, for his health, then he wouldn't need a back scratcher. The health automatically would become healthy. His body would become healthy. He wouldn't have any more itches. Not today, not tomorrow, not forever. The same is when it comes to our lives. Once we become programmed and we become conditioned by this world, when someone asks you something, you are going to address it from your perspective at that given time. To be able to step back and say, 1 second, let me take a bird's eye view and determine whether really that's what I really need right now is very rare and very difficult to do. Because we're accustomed to our approach where you go for your needs, whether it's groceries or, as I said, the different type of needs that we have. Each person has our places we go to. But comes a time of the year like now, when the new cycle of energy, the new cycle of life begins with the beginning of the year Rosh Hashanah, and leading up to the holy days of Yom Kippur, when we reach the essence of all of reality. This is an opportunity to revisit the question, and revisit our routines, and revisit the things we would naturally gravitate to, and come to recognize this Achashalti. The one thing that we request is the element of an eternal foundation, something that gives my life eternal meaning, something that gives me eternal drive and purpose, which can ride out and ride over and ride through any given challenge, any wave that comes our way. And there are three expressions: the dwell, the beholding, and the visiting. What is the difference between the three? So to dwell means where a person dwells in something. It means like a dwelling, a home. You enter into it internally. This becomes your place, your domain. Dwell is more than just visiting. It's something temporary. It's dwelling. It's a dwelling place. But where we're not dwelling in a physical home, we're dwelling in the house of the Lord, which means, essentially, of course, it means the temple, the holy temple. But we know that the holy temple, when it says in the Torah, what it says is, build for me a holy sanctuary, and I will rest among you. So the real temple is the temple that is each one of our bodies, each one of our organs, each one of our limbs and faculties, and we turn that into a dwelling place for what? Not for temporary materialism, but for eternal divinity. Not for short-lived or short-term gains, but for long-term and even eternal values. So if you were this question, you can ask for everything you want. What would you ask? What would it be? Think about it. Again, most people, as I said, would gravitate to money or other material things. But what we really should be gravitating to is the eternal, which automatically brings everything else. So dwell. The first thing is dwell in the sanctuary. The next is to behold. Behold is not dwelling. Behold is looking at something beautiful, a beautiful sight. What is that in this context? We have different senses. One of the most powerful, and maybe the most powerful sense, is vision. Vision captures something like sound cannot capture, and the other senses we have, taste, touch, and smell, do not capture, because there's something, a truth, a resonating truth, that when you see something. Now it's interesting, you can see something you don't understand. You can also see something you don't dwell in. You're seeing it like from a distance or from close up. But what seeing does, it creates a type of resonance of truth of that thing that you're seeing. When you dwell in something, you're there, you're in it. You're in the moment, you're in the zone, you're in the space. When you behold something in lachzes, which is more than just behold, it means a deep type of look. You take a very deep peek, a very deep vision in whatever it is that come your way. That creates a connection to something that's beyond our structures. It's not dwelling, it's not a dwelling place, it's a vision, it's a beholding. And that's the second element of the transcendence that allows us to get beyond the here and now, and becomes part of that, answering that question, what would you ask for? And then finally, there's the third thing, which is visiting your sanctuary. Now you could say, one second, didn't we just say dwelling in the house of the Lord, and now we're saying visiting? Visiting suggests not permanent, it's a visitor, a passing through. And in that sense, it seems to be a contradiction. But the key word is heichale, your sanctuary. Earlier it says in the house of the Lord is the general temple, which was built like a microcosm of the human being. As Nachmanides and the Shalah and Rabbeinu Bachai and others have already enumerated how each one of the limbs and organs of a human being reflect in the temple. And that's why there's a book called Teres Se'ela from the Ramah Isserlish. Ramah was called the Mappa, like the tablecloth of the Shulchan Aruch, of the Code of Jewish Law. So he wrote a book called Teres Se'ela, which goes through every graphic detail of the temple and explains it Kabbalistically and mystically. So it's not just a technicality, it's very much a fundamental part of our structure, just like the human body has a mind, and we have a heart, and we have legs, which is essentially the cognitive, the emotional, and we'll call it the practical, the faculties. Same thing, the temple is made up of 3 parts. The Holy of Holies, that corresponds to the mind. That's where the Aron HaKodesh, that's where the Holy Ark would rest. And that's where the Torah was placed, together with the second tablets and also the broken first tablets. All there. So because that is the Holy of Holies. Then comes the section called Kodesh, the Holy. There you had the tabernacle of the bread. That corresponds to the 3 pillars: Chesed, kindness, bread. And the next is the menorah, which was light, bringing light to the world. And the third was the altar, the inner altar, which corresponds to the heart, the emotional connection to the divine. But when we talk about, in the context of what we're discussing, the dwelling place that we enter, that we desire to dwell in the house of the Lord, we're talking about all 3 dimensions. So therefore, when we discuss this whole idea of requests, what we're requesting, we're looking to create within our system, because you can say, listen, you have a mind, you have a heart, you have actions, and they're dedicated to work, they're dedicated to enjoying yourself, they're dedicated to different pleasures and entertainment. But we're saying no. We're saying, one thing I request, and this I seek, is to enter, to dwell on the throne, to dwell in the house of the Lord. The house of the Lord, to dwell that all parts of us, our mind, our emotional conditioning, our cognitive conditioning, our emotional conditioning, and our action-based conditioning, our basic functions, should all be directed toward a dwelling place, a home for the divine. Imagine your mind is a place where God can rest. Same thing with your heart, the same thing with your behavior, your actions, your behavioral conditioning. And then comes, as I mentioned, lachze is to behold the pleasantness. So pleasantness is already something, the pleasantness of the Lord, is something that's not as tangible. Because what does the pleasantness mean? It means a pleasant, refined, beautiful life. That's what it means. So the first deals mostly with the faculties, where you're elevating yourself to a place that is indeed transcendent and beyond the here and now, and therefore eternal. But the envisioning or beholding, the pleasantness is bringing a certain beauty and life, a beauty and the refined qualities into your life. You find people, for example, that are very spiritual, they're very connected to higher things, but you don't always see that they're pleasant. They can be very intense, they can be very harsh, they can be very critical. Pleasantness is a critical element in anything. When you ask somebody for a favor and you do it pleasantly, everything changes. If you ask for that same request to somebody who may owe you something, they may do it begrudgingly, but there's nothing that beats pleasantness to be pleasant. It's something to work on. And that's the second request, the second part of this one request, and that is lachzes, to behold the pleasantness, lachzes b'noyim Hashem, to behold the pleasantness of the Lord. And then will come the third section. Now, pleasantness, I want to add a few more things about that. In a sense, asking God and saying, you know, I'm too bitter, I'm too broken, I'm too negative about things. I want you to allow me to have a smile on my face. I want you to allow me to be able to, at times, I don't say the word escape, but transcend the moment and being able to just be a pleasant person. You meet many people, they're just not pleasant. They have anger in them, they have resentment. They usually go back to childhood, and they just have their very, very negative attitude to things. Obviously, our discussion here is meant to counter that balance by bringing up the fact that you can be a pleasant person if you behave that way. Sometimes you have to fake it. Be nice, be pleasant. The aplomb is basically dignity under duress. When you're not, there's no duress, there's no tensions. So being pleasant is not a great achievement. Even though even then some people have the challenge. But when you're dealing with stress, you're dealing with challenges, that's when it really arises. So where do we ultimately learn the deepest form of pleasantness is from God Himself. That's why the pleasantness in the ways, expression is the pleasantness, to behold the pleasantness of the Lord, which is lachzes b'noyim Hashem. Noyim is also sweetness. And you're beholding it, you're perceiving it, you're relating to it, and you're, of course, yearning for it. Then comes finally the third part, where he says, the part that he says that it's to visit his sanctuary. Now we're not talking about no longer. Before it was spoke about the house of the Lord, the general house, as I said, the mind, the emotions, and the behavioral. 3 different vessels and containers within the heart section. But overall, it's three: the Chabad, Chagas, Nehi, the cognitive, the emotional, and the behavioral. But now we're talking Behechel Kodshe. Behechel, exact language, Levaka Behechole, sorry. Sometimes Behechel HaKodesh. Heichel is the actual sanctuary. It's actually the place, the Kodesh, where the holiest things took place. Sometimes it refers also to the Holy of Holies. But you're no longer talking about the general temple in general. So, and here, therefore, we say visit, we don't say dwell. Because dwell, dwell indicates a permanence, a dwelling place, a dira. Levake means to visit. And visiting indicates that this is something where we can't really dwell in because it's beyond us. You can visit it, you can watch it, you can learn from it, but you really cannot, you cannot internalize it and make it part of your home. It always remains something beyond you. That's why you're visiting it. So there goes the 3 different expressions. All are meant to answer this question. If you were able to ask for anything, what would it be? It would be these 3 elements: to dwell in the house of the Lord, to behold His pleasantness, and finally to visit the Heichel. So dwell, behold, or see, and visit is basically 3 dimensions of any real experience. So in that sense, what you have here is direct verse that we say these days, and if we said it and took it to heart, it would actually be the key to the salvation of our personal lives and our collective lives, as Maimonides explains in these chapters, that Besev Galusan, the end of exile, we're promised, the Torah promises, that every Jew will do tshuva, and they will immediately go into redemption. Well, how could it be immediate? What about all the challenges around the world? Because remember, we are midgets that stand on the shoulders of giants. So whatever was accomplished, we can only accumulate and build from there, grow further. That's why it goes into that element that it prepares us for whatever this holiday brings. Now I know that many of us have different challenges, and it sounds very nice to be able to speak and sit here and speak about these higher experiences. But how do I deal with it? I basically I'm worn down. I'm challenged by so many different elements, family members or other work, just preparing the meals and so on. And he's telling me all these ideas about transcendence and about getting beyond your needs and going into a world that is a world of the soul or the eternal instead of the temporary. So it's a message, but how long can you study this and discuss it again and again? Well, the answer, my friends, is it's never enough, because we're dealing with a real struggle. We're dealing with a real challenge. First of all, many people won't even embrace or acknowledge anything I've said here, because they'll say, what are you talking about? The creation of 5,778, that's just around the corner. And Darwin proved that species have been evolving, as if that's a contradiction. I never understood the contradiction. But bottom line is, don't tell us what to do. Exact opposite of the Torah that says, because you study this universe and you've seen its beauty, you've seen its science, now you understand to appreciate what I ask you to do. That doesn't exist in the Iranian system. Doesn't exist, that concept. So how do you get them to rattle the tree, so to speak? How do you get someone in that state of mind to be able to transcend and get to a place where you go to a higher place than just your own survival? Well, that's why we go into our souls. And there's an expression in the Zohar that says, when your soul is more powerful, your body is weaker. When your body is more powerful, your soul is weaker. Now, this should not be misunderstood as being, God forbid, a person's health or a person's physical strength is a contradiction to spiritual growth. It means that when you indulge, and you indulge in your needs, and you indulge in your material survival, then it distracts you from what you need to be doing in reaching a higher place. And the same thing, the opposite. When you're strong in the transcendent dimension, it automatically weakens the hold of materialism in our lives. But this comes to the key point that is critical in mystical, Jewish mystical thought. In some schools of mysticism, the key is reaching transcendence, spirituality, and ignoring and rejecting the body and its limitations. In Judaism, we don't say that. We say that the spirit and the matter and spirit are equally distant from the divine. They're equally distant. And the key to real growth is not asceticism and denying the material, but it's harnessing it and recognizing that it has even more powerful energy than we could ever imagine. And how do you harness it? The soul has to direct the body. The soul has to direct the body, and like a captain of a ship, and give it the vision and the direction and guidance that's necessary. And then it reveals that power within the body as well, within the material as well. So the real approach then is not asceticism or denying the material, it's fusion. It's the fusion between matter and spirit, between body and soul, in a total seamless fusion. And that's when we say a world that will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Waters cover the sea means there is a sea, there's a seabed, and there's earth there, there's land, but it's completely submerged by with the knowledge of God, like waters that cover the sea. And that's where you start getting the combination of both elements, that you have not just the survival element, but also the element that is transcendent. And most importantly, that they get fused together. They get fused together in the fullest sense of the word. So in a way, you can say, when you go back to the three expressions, to dwell, to behold, like with our vision, and to visit, you can say that the visiting is obviously you're visiting something that's beyond you. Whereas when you dwell in it, it's not so much beyond you, it's within you. And the middle level is the idea of beholding. When you see something, is it internalizing it or is it beyond you? To use language of Kabbalah and Hasidic thought, that we have transcendent experience like a makif that surrounds us, and then we have internal experience that imbue and that are immanent and are internalized within us, internalized. So when you think of it, dwell is an internal thing. Visiting is an external thing, external meaning it's transcendent, because you can't own it, you can't dwell in it, but you visit it. And the way you could say in between is the concept of beholding with your eyes. Because when you look at something, on one hand, it's not internal. You look at it, you're seeing the reflection of the light on the item, and that in turn reflects back to you so you can recognize what it is. It's really more or less light energy. That's what vision is all about. On the other hand, you can be affected by something that you see visually that can totally transform you. That's the power of vision. Hearing something has a certain depth and power to it, but at the end of the day, it does not have that same element of resonance. When you see something, it can hypnotize you. It consumes you. Listening, you listen piece by piece by piece. A vision, you may not understand, you may not be able to listen to it, but you can experience it in a very powerful way because the concentration of the transcendent energy is entering the immanent reality. So in that sense, in that sense, you're having like an in-between. So you have transcendence completely, that is the visiting in the sanctuary. You have immanent energy, which is dwelling in the house of the Lord. All of my days, focus on days as in time and space with the structure of days. And then you have the in-between level, which is essentially the visualization or beholding, lachzes, b'nei Hashem, the pleasantness of God, where on one hand it's seeing it, on the other hand it affects you deeply because it can resonate. It's not just a superficial sight. So there you have three elements in addressing what transcendence truly is. Now for each one of us, we all have our challenges and each one of us has our difficulties. And it's very difficult, as I said before, to get out of your routine. Your routine, someone will say, okay, let's start meditating on Moda'ani or on Biyot Chav Keduchi or other prayers, or even this one, the David Hashem Eri, where we talk about the one request and the three dimensions about dwelling, visiting, dwelling, beholding, and visiting. But the fact of the matter is, we have our real challenges on a very basic level. So the point here is not to overwhelm us with a whole new perspective, but rather just to put that focus of what really matters. And it would be an excellent exercise for each of us to try this out with your homes. Ask your wife or your husband, your spouse. Ask your friends, ask your children, ask your grandchildren. As we go to Yom Kippur, ask them, if you were to ask for anything, what would it be? And provoke this question, this compelling question of determining what is important. You'll be surprised how people will answer superficial answers time and again, because it's obviously a question that can't be answered lightly. You have to think about it if you're going to answer with integrity, and it's challenging. And it's challenging to the point that it could actually create even disagreements. But yet, it's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's good disagreements because it will lead us to really recalibrating, or I would say revisiting our mission and our calling in this world. And that's, of course, the key objective as we stand in this period in time. Because if you think of it like an analogy, and I've shared this analogy based on the Hasidic writings of the Mittler Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, where he uses the expression, the analogy that these 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are like Kiruv, Dirsh Hashem b'matzu karuv b'yesek karuv. Beseech, call out to God when He is to be found, and karu and call out, Dirshu, which means beseech God when He is to be found, and call out to God when He's close. So the obvious question, what do you mean God is always equally close to us? There's no such thing as being on a higher level, you're closer to Him. In many ways, we're even closer because the real purpose of it all is not, as he says in Tanya in chapter 36, is Hoyel Lahem Yiridim, the higher worlds cannot be the purpose because they're a descent from even higher worlds than them. So you have to say the purpose is a place where you don't have any qualities at all. And that's the ultimate goal, that to reach a place like that. So even in all the days of my life, to reach a place to create a dwelling place. But we also want to be able to have an experience that is also transcendent. So pose this question to your family. Have your children answer. Give them an incentive. Give them a holiday gift or prize or an award. And if we did something like this, all of us, it would just, if nothing else, reframe our questions and our priorities in life. You'd be surprised how many people's priorities have nothing to do with anything eternal. They're all temporary, they're all childish, essentially. So it's one thing a newborn, one thing in early formative years. But as they grow, how we train them in that regard is going to determine how they answer this question, that if you can ask for anything, what would it be? Unfortunately, I did do the tests, and unfortunately what I discovered is most young people either look at you incredulously, like where you're coming from, it's completely off the wall, or they don't have an answer because they're busy with other things. So this is a great question, especially as we stand in these days, and it's provocative, and it's also in a way appealing, because it's an interesting question to ask people. What would it be that you would ask for? You know, I guess it's like a twin sister, a twin cousin to, not twin cousin. It's like a twin to the question that what mark would you like to leave? If you could make a mark in this universe, what would it be? Would it be helping people? Would it be creating something? What would it be like? So these two questions go hand in hand of what, if you had a request, if you could ask something, what would it be? And what would you like to make, what mark would you like to leave in this universe? That helps you defend and identify where your skills are and where you'd like to put your passion. And then act on it. People ask, well, it's a new year, how come I don't feel new energy? New energy needs containers. It needs somewhere to rest its laurels. It needs somewhere to be internalized. So you could have the most brilliant speech, you could have the most brilliant class, you could have great inspiration, but you need it to be grounded. And hence you have the grounding of the different elements in this season that are all meant to take transcendence and bottle it in a way that we can identify with it, we can experience it. So try it out. Try talking about this question with your children, with guests, with others, in a very pleasant and kind way, and you'll be surprised what you'll find. You'll find the importance of the vitality of this type of thought to people of all walks of life, I should add. not just Jewish people, to all walks of life, because everybody is in need of transcendence as well as immanence and internalizing it all in our personal lives. So, my friends, in sum, when you talk about the idea of one request or many requests, what would it be? Immediately look to eternal things. Do not look to temporary things. It would be ridiculous to ask for them, because once you asked, you've gotten, and then you have basically drained that resource. So you don't want to ask if someone says, do you want water from a well? Say, no, I want the well. Do you want to learn how to fish? Do you want fish, or you want to learn how to fish? I want to learn how to fish. Always look for the thing that brings the rest of it there. That's the key in the order of any type of logical request. So as we wind down these days, each of these days is a countdown toward Yom Kippur, which will be coming Saturday, Shabbos, this holiest day of the year, which in this case supersedes even Shabbos in the case that we don't eat and drink and we don't have festive meals, even though Yom Kippur is not for negative reasons, like Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the calendar, but it is abstaining because we're like angels, Malachim. And Malachim and Amelech actually have the same letters except the Aleph. So we are like kings, Mamlechas Kohanim, kings, Mamlechas Kohanim, a king of priestly kings. And as a king, there's a certain dignity that you carry yourself with. You don't want to be caught, even privately, hiding or avoiding a situation because it's uncomfortable. You also don't want to become uncomfortable when the predator is around, and that you are able to not have the fears of being able to expose something that is negative. That's all part of the process of taking something the negative and looking at it straight in its eyes. Because adversity, as he says in this psalm, is what is overcome by the foundations when you stand on eternal foundations. We have too many negative things in our lives, and you don't want to, even though you need to clean up the dust, you don't want to become a dust collector. You want to clean up the dust, so in order to reveal the deeper eternal elements within you. So in a sense, there's two stages to the process in these days. The one is to look at the things that are negative, but not to be consumed by them, and recognize we're connecting to a request that connects us to the things that are eternal. As I've discussed many times, when you dedicate your life to something eternal, you become an extension of that eternity. If you dedicate yourself, your life to your own success, you may be driven and you will be successful, but it will always be commensurate to your own limitations. So our real goal is to have the connection to something that is beyond each one of us. And hence, God should bless every one of you that when you do ask that question, and you should ask that question, but ask it correctly, and you'll find that you will get answers that are commensurate to your request. Ask for a shard, for a back scratcher, and you may get that request fulfilled. Ask, however, for something that is beyond, something that is eternal, that gives you something that will last with you forever and beyond, then that becomes your reality. And this includes, of course, expanding our minds and our hearts and our souls and our spirits and our faculties to much broader horizons. So Yom Kippur is a day when we connect to the essence. I mentioned before the flame gets closer to its source. Think of it like an orbit. And when the flame gets closer to the source, it begins to lick, gets closer, it's like they hug each other, the two flames. But this, in essence, is what we've been discussing. It's the point that you really come to connect, not so much you know and understand every word in the prayers that you say, but rather you come to connect to the core of who you are. And that is to dwell in the house of the Lord, to behold His pleasantness, and to visit His sanctuary, His innermost sanctuary, which is only possible through a visit, not through dwelling. And when you combine all these three things, it really affects us. Because we're so distracted, as I mentioned, by the things we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, but especially the visual. And that's why it's so important, Lachzis b'nei Hashem, to look at the visual, to look at the beauty of the universe, the eloquence, the exquisiteness of how the universe was created. Lachzis b'nei Hashem. Levakar, and then to visit Heichel Kodshe, which is the inner sanctum, which is a critical element, of course, in reaching the ultimate essence of everything that exists. So, I want to conclude as I began. We are coming to the days of the holiest day of the year, when Moses finally prevails over God to forgive the people. And it was a horrible sin, very premeditated, called idolatry. So if that can be forgiven, anything can be forgiven. So may we all do our part in gaining this forgiveness. Forgiveness can be on something negative. It could also be and not doing as much as you should be doing. That's all. You could have reached more, and you haven't, so that time is not fully used. So we should actually use this time to correct all that by being introspective and honest, and also look into our children to see what we can do to inspire them, each according to Chanech Lanar Al Pi Darkei, each according to his or her way. And that is a key element. I'm not looking to convert anybody. We're looking to help people that recognize what is their core connection and their core essence of what is really like. As I discussed last week, the Michelangelo statement that we all have the angels trapped in the marble within us. So we don't have to go look for it. We have to carve and set her free. That is the angel. But it's there. You have everything you need to live the happiest possible life. Everything you need to be able to fulfill and actualize your great potential. And everything you need to connect with others as well as with God in building a foundational element, an eternal foundational security that can not just withstand storms, it transcends every change and every vicissitude and every mood, and allows us to connect to that which is beyond all these fluctuating changes in our reality. So we conclude by saying, this should be a blessed, may you be sealed in the house of life. Did I say the house of life? You may be sealed in the house of sealed in eternal life, in the book of eternal life, in a way that we dwell in the house of the Lord, and we envision and we behold the beauty and pleasantness of the divine, and we visit the Heichal Kodesh, meaning even that which is beyond, we stand in awe of, because it's beyond even being beyond. So until next Wednesday will not be a class because it's already Sukkot, as well as the next Wednesday after that. But we will resume, in other words, in 2 weeks, in 3 Wednesdays from this class. So this has been Simon Jacobson speaking to you about if you could ask for anything, what would it be in this particular time of the year? And may your blessings and may your prayers and requests be fulfilled into the fullest in a revealed way. And if need be, say to God, I don't always know what I need, but you know what I need. So please, you tell me, you bless me with the things I need. And all of us together should experience the personal redemption and collective redemption when what will be redeemed will be redeemed, this life within the superficial, immediate here and now that so many are consumed with, and allows us to connect to a place that is beyond time and space, beyond. So even as we dwell in the house of the Lord, all my days, we say, Kol Yemei Chaye, all my days, all the days of my life, that even the days are permeated with that which is beyond day and beyond time. Everyone have a very blessed year. As I said, the next class will be after Sukkot, after Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, and it's always an honor to intersect with you, always an honor for souls to commune and connect. If there's any questions you have, any other way we can help, we'd like to subscribe to our various emailings. This is the place to do so, meaningfullife.com/subscribe, and browse around our site. There's plenty of material, including related to these holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and as we go into the joyous days of Sukkot, where it says that basically the first half of the month, meaning till the 10th of the month, or till the 15th of the month actually, till Sukkot, is considered Smeli Tachas L'Reishi. Smeli, my left hand was beneath his head. It's all Yom Neroim, it's more days of awe. So though there's Gilui B'Roda, there's a joy within when you stand in front of the king, but you don't make somersaults, and you don't begin to celebrate in a revealed way. Then comes the 15th of Tishrei, Sukkot, full moon of Sukkot, and with Kesler Yom Chagein, and now we go into the celebratory days. We celebrate that which we were celebrating internally in front of the king. We wouldn't dance and sing, but now we start dancing the joy of what came from Yom Kippur. So the second half of the month is also not an escape into joy. It follows the pain and anguish of Yom Kippur to the point that we gain that forgiveness, we gain that hope that we can achieve anything we set our minds to do. So God bless you all. Everyone should have a very, as I said, blessed year. And until next class, and please stay in touch in every possible way. Be well.